I want attacking, purposeful football all the time. Now we're going to have backs against the wall and we're going to fight, and we're going to fight hard. You've got to show me all the guts and all the determination you've got in your body. You've got to inspire me.
A marvellous kick. That's as good as you'll ever see. And Footscray are back in front.
I don't know about you guys, but if I see one bloke walking out of here, give the pat on the back from people out there for a good effort, I'll spew up.
From inside the centre square, Boyd kicked the goal. Boyd kicked the goal from inside the centre.
Hey, Pack, welcome to Danny Boyd, a podcast about the Footscray Football Club, Proprietary Limited, trading as Western Bulldogs. I'm Danny McGinlay. Tom Boyd, how are you?
I've had better Mondays as a Bulldog supporter, Danny.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a nice day in Launceston yesterday by the looks of things. That was probably the highlight for me.
Yeah, welcome to our weather podcast. Yeah. I reckon, so we were just chatting off air. So just for a bit of an insight into doing a sports podcast about a certain
Media
football
analytics.
Club. Media analytics, that's good. Our ratings, if the Bulldogs have a great win, a lot more of you tune in, download. Understandable. Want to talk about the Dogs, the greatest football team of all. When we lose, like we did yesterday, shockingly, less of you are here. So welcome, you gluttons for punishment.
Yeah. I presume it's just the Patreons that are tuning in today.
Probably. And if you're not a Patreon and you are still listening to this, you should join up because you are clearly a hardcore fan. And for only $5 a month.
Yeah, $5, make your money.
You get a bonus.
If you spend a few grand, you can get us to mow your lawn.
That's true. Yeah, there's tiers. I don't know if we haven't mentioned this for a while. There's $5 a month. You just get a bonus episode every second week. If you go in like $25, you get a book, you get Tom's book.
Yep. And some stubby holders.
Stubby holders, even a DVD of me doing stand-ups. You don't
Back
have a DVD.
when he had hair too, no less.
Yeah, it's an older one. I'm doing another special soon. I'll announce that coming up. And if you do like $2,000 a month, we'll mow your lawn.
It's a value proposition that can't be beat. But we should bring in our guest because this is someone.
Oh wait, hang on. There's an update on that. I've got a lawnmower and a whippersnipper now.
On the guest or the lawnmower?
The lawnmower. So like we did have. Actually, I've got to change it on the Patreon. It said you must provide us with a lawnmower. Right. I've got one now.
Oh, good. And if you pay $10,000 a month, you can get Danny to whippersnip the whole lawn instead of actually. We should bring in the guest.
Anyway,
someone that I've known for a long, long time. Someone I've always looked up to. He's kind of gone from a bit of a mercurial small forward as a under-18s player. Took one of the marks of the absolute century that has gone down in the history alongside Toby McLean as players who played forward and took big marks and then got drafted and got sent back to the back line of the midfield. We've got Hayden Crozier with us today.
Thanks, gentlemen. It's an absolute privilege to be here.
It's funny. I did play with Hayden back in the Eastern Rangers day, and he was I remember you so vividly being the, as I said, mercurial sort of half forward with a brilliant left foot. Big mark, could jump, could kick some goals, and then all of a sudden you got sent over to Fremantle, and you had Ross Lyon over there, right? And Ross turned you into a Dow fullback. Is that about right?
So initially, obviously going over there, I played a bit of forward early on, and then sort of through necessity of the team, we had Michael Walters, Hayden Ballantyne, obviously good players. So I went back and I felt like I had a pretty decent year, one of the years that I played back, and obviously worked out. So Jason McCartney got me to the Dogs, which was nice.
It is. It's not something that's often that easy to make that transition from forward to back. Like most half forwards that I think about, like put it this way: when I was playing in the AOS, they sent me back for a quarter, and we were playing in Denmark. Who
are you playing against?
Well, this was a bit of a mixed team. So we played the European Legion over there, and we beat them by about 200 points. Now, the European Legion consisted of a bunch of guys that I think they'd pulled off the farm. I don't know. I don't think they'd ever seen an oval football before. They spent much time playing either rugby or playing soccer. But in the game that I'm mentioning, we sort of split the AOS guys. So there's about 30 of us in the program. We had 15 aside, and we topped up with a few Italians and Danes, I presume. Don't know where we got these people from. And they sent me back to play on a guy named Darcy Hardigan, I think his name was. He didn't end up getting drafted. And in about 8 minutes, he kicked 3 goals, 2 on me.
Wow.
And I've never been more lost in my life. So for forwards, it's not always the simplest thing ever. How long did it take you to, sort of make the transition from, basically trying to get the ball to stopping people getting the ball?
Yeah, it took me a little bit, but I think the difference between playing forward and back is when you're playing back, the play's in front of you, so it's a little bit easier to read the game. As you know, playing a lot of footy yourself, the small forward role can be quite the graveyard shift depending on sort of how the team structures up, and a lot of the times it's the role players and guys that might not come in and get, the 20 touches and kick a couple of goals, but they're coming out getting 5 or 6 tackles. So I think for me it freed me up a little bit, and I think it sort of allowed me to play probably a little bit more of a natural game. And I think especially in that Fremantle team, we had, it was a really experienced team. As I mentioned before, Michael Walters, Hayden Ballantyne, but then you had Pavlich obviously forward as well. So
he was all right.
To be honest with him, if I was leading at the footy, the ball's not coming my way. It's going over the top. So, it felt good to just change things up a little bit, free a bit of things up, and felt it went all right.
I think there's one thing that you missed in describing the small forward role. It's also the first person to get dropped. The team's not coming.
Is it?
True.
And it's also the first one to get sprayed. Because every coach loves you and you're kicking goals, but as soon as the team's losing, it's like, why aren't you putting more pressure on? And it's like, oh, you didn't ask me to do that last week, and I kicked 3. So you don't want to find yourself between a bad team and a coach as the small forward. They'll always be the one that they throw out to the wolves, I think.
Really? I'm surprised you say that, considering how much you have said over the course of this podcast that being the ruck full forward is the hardest position.
I think it's physically the hardest.
Okay.
Small forward, man, I can't stand small forwards, honestly. Can't stand it.
There's one
Shelby as well,
behind you.
aren't they?
Yeah, they're look, at least, so let's use the current example, Cody. The good thing about Cody is at least he can mark, right?
Yes, he
because
can.
most small forwards spend the entire day letting their man jump and stick their knees in the big forward's bloody ribs and then trying to get the crumbs. Like, oh, I'm front and centre. I'm like, you know what else is front and centre? My ribs, which are broken from your man jumping on me all day. So how this is just for full transparency. We're obviously recording this on the Monday after the loss to Hawthorn.
Yes.
To Hawthorn.
It's so depressing. it's just so we now it's looking like we're probably going to have to beat Geelong in Geelong to make finals, which is the nightmare scenario that all Dogs fans are just triggered by at all times. But actually, Hayden told us something. Absolute, okay, we're all angry that we lost. The players have been punished enough. Hayden, how would they have flown back yesterday?
Yeah, well, I'm not absolutely certain of this, but usually when you play in Tassie, you fly back with the team that you play against, usually because of the lack of flight. So
and then probably with all the Nuffy fans as well.
They would have. Well, everyone would have been on the same flight, really.
Yeah,
so
there's only one flight.
Yeah, so you get the Bulldogs players. Most likely probably the Hawthorn players, depending if they might have stayed down there for an extra night, I'm not too sure. But you get the fans on there as well.
So tell us, because it's not the Hawthorn team of old, even though we did lose to them yesterday. Who's getting business out of those two clubs? Because it's a constant jostling.
Really?
And when people say... So as you can imagine, that there's some tall players playing AFL football and, they need a bit of extra leg room. That's not really how it works. How it works is... who's the oldest and who's the best. And then after that, then they start to consider height.
That's true.
There were games I remember back when I was like, Tom Campbell was playing and he was in like the cheap seats up the back. But so if you're both on the same flight, who out of Hawthorn and Bulldogs claim business class at this stage?
Well, Timmy English would definitely be up there, just purely based on height.
And form.
Not form, obviously.
Tim's another guy who sat in the cheap seats when he wasn't playing that good.
So he's definitely not sitting in the cheap seats anymore.
Considering Timmy took that last kick out and
maybe sent him.
Think he was sent home on Jetstar.
Yeah, put him in the baggage. Put him underneath.
Timmy would be up there. Bont's obviously up there. And then basically just be a mix of probably the guys who are either the tallest or basically experience as well. So Lobby would be up there. But I guess probably on those, if we actually did fly with Hawthorn, which again, I'm not too sure, they'd have a couple of their players up the front. And they're the smaller Virgin planes now. It's not the old ones where there's you fly to Perth and back when I was over at Freo and there'd be 16 business seats and I'd be saying, I've got a corky after the game just to get on one.
Actually, listeners might not know this. One time that I flew over to Perth, I was doing some gigs at the Comedy Club there and I also timed it so I could watch the Dogs play you got me a ticket, Boydy. This is pre-podcast, but you got me a ticket.
Don't remember that.
Well, it was very nice of you. We got flogged.
Is Freo?
I think so, yeah.
Was my 50th, maybe?
Freo or West Coast? Obviously Freo. Freo West Coast. Jeez, that's a
Yeah,
dumb thing to say.
It wasn't Adelaide. We were playing over there.
Unless it was in the hub and somehow it was just two random teams over there.
Gather around in Perth.
But I flew back on the same flight as the team, and I remember chatting to Toby McLean in the Virgin Lounge, and he was all like, "Hey, I've got an exit row. This is going all right." And then one of the assistant coaches marched up to him and went, "No, you have to swap with." Someone had faked an injury to get it.
And Toby was the first to get bumped down the order back then because Toby's really nice, which doesn't help.
He's too nice.
Yeah, there's no friends in the seat game. Is a
Really?
tale as old as time. And it was crazy. I had this perfect cycle of whenever we were flying anywhere beyond 45 minutes out of Melbourne, my back that week started to get real sore. Now, I have height on my side, so I was always designated to get a business class.
Well, how's one of our... So when we played Gold Coast up in Darwin this year, the VFL played Gold Coast Resi's up there as well. And so we had a private chartered plane, and it was from the other airport. And
From Essendon?
Yeah, from Essendon.
Awesome.
Yep. And no one had any assigned seats, right? So it was basically... everyone's walking on.
First in, best dressed.
But it's a mix of obviously all the VFL boys, all the AFL boys, and in your head you sort of know who's roughly going to be at the front. So there was probably 8 seats at the front which generally could recline fully back, and I was one of the first on. So I'm like, I am year 12. I could probably take it, but I was like, I'm not going to do it. So I took the first one behind those, which was extra leg room as well.
Yeah.
No one batted an eyelid, so I was like,
There you
it's not
go.
too bad.
Strategic.
But
So who in the front 12 seats you just mentioned took one that shouldn't have?
No, I reckon everyone that got there was probably well deserving to that. But at one stage, we had one of our media guys, Elliot. I'm not sure if you met him up the front. We put him up the front. He'd be 5'6", I reckon, and we just chucked it.
his
5'6",
feet don't touch the
5'7",
ground.
and we just chucked him with 1A. And he's from Perth, so we've got pretty much the same friend group over there. So made sure I got a couple of photos and sent it to the boys. They were like, "Have a look at this bloke."
So if Bigsy was on that flight, he would have taken the pilot seat.
Bigsy would have been right.
He would have come on with sunnies and aviation hat.
He would
on.
have had the boombox, him red, Dale.
I must say, speaking of injuries, Shane Biggs went to play back at a place called Bort this year.
Bort.
Which is sort of northwest. It's up near Bridgewater and stuff.
My
So
son
playing-
is also called Bort.
So it's a cashy, I'm assuming.
I presume so. Anyway, so I asked him how it was going, and he goes, went out there first training session after pre-season and tore his hamstring.
Oh, God.
And I was like, so I must say, we should check in with our great friend of the show, Shane Biggs, to see if he's had a fabulous season or he spent most of it DJing on the sidelines.
I think that's actually a great idea, especially if we lose to West Coast this week or we miss finals.
We need someone to cheer us up.
We need just a Bigsy hit. That's a great idea. Hey, I interviewed Hayden Crozier before the game in the player sponsor Top Dogs area where I MC. Hayden Crozier said that the reason he got drafted was Tom Boyd.
It was. He was kicking me the ball at Rangers or vice versa. We were both in the same forward line back then. So it was myself, Boydie, Pato. It was a pretty decent forward line. I was just sort of the guy that would run out of the way of it and try to get front and centre and hope my man wouldn't put my knee through. Put his knee through Boydie.
It was pretty cruisy at that stage because TAC Cup clubs back then, you don't have 2 key defenders. You have 1 decent key defender, and they always went to John Patton. So when I played 3 or 4 games with H, because you're a couple of years older than me, I was playing on a 5'7", halfback flanker. So I think I ended up kicking more goals than Patto whilst I was playing at that stage. It was pretty.
Honestly, I reckon our kick-out strategy back then was wherever Boydie and Pato are, just kick it to them. And I was just I'll just go that side because I'm not going on the other side. I'm not getting near it. So I was it was good time. Did you? So in your Eastern Rangers career, were you guys rubbish both years? Yeah, we had a good list.
Yeah, you
both
did.
years. We had a fair few guys drafted, but yeah, we were never really.
Who was drafted out of your class?
What club does this remind me of? Good list, underperform.
No. This is like the Gold Coast Suns equivalent.
Oh, okay.
We've got a lot of high draft picks, and none of us were winning.
So top age year, it was Johnny, myself.
Jonathan Patton.
Yeah, Johnny
number
Patton.
one.
Yeah.
Yep. So the Eastern Rangers almost had 3 number 1 picks in 4 years because it was John Patton.
Yeah.
Then it was a gap. Then it was me, and then it was Christian Petrarca went 2.
Oh wow!
In 3 years.
So it was Pato, myself, Max Warren, Alex.
We went to North Melbourne.
Alex Greenwood.
We went to Bulldogs.
Doggies.
He played a few games for us. He was drafted 2011.
Yeah, 2011. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I might have missed it. I might have missed 1 or 2, but my bottom age year was Kieran Harper, Aaron Young, Cam O'Shea, Aaron Mullett. So there's a fair few.
Because Sam Blease is he a year older than you? But
He's 2 years older, I think, yeah.
and he was drafted as a 17-year-old.
Yeah.
We see Eastern Rangers. We had a bunch of good players.
Yeah.
They never won until we came along our year, because we went from in our 2 years we finished bottom. We won 3 games in a row in the middle of the year, so like round 7 to 10, and then we didn't win another game for the year. And that was against like Jake Stringer's Bendigo Pioneers, who were also at the bottom of the ladder. And then in our top age year we won the flag, and we won the flag by 20 goals. So that was a very rare moment of joy and success in our under 18s.
What's the Eastern Rangers song?
That's a good question.
Oh, I can't remember. We didn't sing it that often, so
We did.
yeah, you did. I didn't. I honestly can't remember what it was.
Nah.
Are they all based on like the AFL songs, or are they?
Nah, I think
Ours was like a
completely made up. It was proprietary.
Yeah.
I think we did mention the mountains a few times in the song. Given that we were the Dandenong Rangers.
It was cold. It was cold out in Kilsyth for training sessions. I do remember that. Driving up there on my L's, Mum would sit in the car for 2 hours, watch us train. I'd be in the long skins, lower and upper skins. And
you look like you're wearing a wetsuit.
And then go in and have some soup, which tasted great, but I don't reckon I've got many taste buds left after that.
No, it was too hot.
Rare and hot that. But
I think the good thing about the Eastern Rangers was that at least we were like, it was a club. Like compared to a lot of the TAC Cup or Coates High Cup clubs now, it's a very transitory space, as you can imagine, because you're only spending, basically me and Ben Kavara and Mitch Honeychurch, who all came in at the same time and all ended up actually playing at the Dogs, and we were sort of the best players from our year at that stage. We came at 15 and then spent basically till 18. We were there on a regular basis, but for most players you spend half a year, maybe 18 months if you stretch it. So I think the good thing, as I said, about the Eastern Rangers, it's like when you walked into that place, it was the same faces. They wanted like to be a proper community club. They wanted to make you feel like you're at home. All that stuff was. I had a great time there. I thought it was a great place to get good at footy, I suppose.
So you don't even have time to like build rivalries and stuff. Like
you do a bit because, but it's more player to player rivalries. I say because some of the, to be honest, like. A lot of the people played for Oakley were a bunch of wankers, so that was it was easy to
include Toby McLean.
The private school.
Nah,
boys.
Toby was younger. That
was probably the difference. Like I feel like at Rangers we didn't have that many private school guys.
No, we had none. Yeah.
It was all like,
except for this guy.
But not APSHS. So like
what is that? Hang on, what's
APSHS is the grammar school competition. The one. Really? So all of like Carey and Wesley and all those guys, they play in that comp, and they play sport, like as in they play school football from. I want to say it's like May through to August. So you miss those players in the TAC Cup competition because you have to play for your school because they're all on scholarships.
Right.
So when you say private school, that's what we mean, as in like they're private school footballers. Now, I can honestly say, so I played obviously 16s, 17s and 18s state. And in 16s, these people, and 17s actually when we were bottom age players, so because we had a couple of guys who didn't end up getting drafted. So it was our captain Brandon Wood, and then Mitch O'Donnell, who was like our best player, and myself playing under 18s bottom age. And these people looked at me like I was an alien from outer space because I came from the Eastern Rangers. Like they treated us so shit. Really? And then we started winning and started playing well, and they were all our best friends. It was crazy.
Yeah, interesting. It's weird how that works.
Yeah, and look, the other thing about the private school thing is that so what happens is they all play under 12s state, and they play national schoolboys state, and then they get picked up in the scholarship thing for year 7. So they all know each other for a long time. Which is why they all treated the people who are from the bush. Which I was like, I was from
the bush.
I'm from Ringwood, mate. I got a shopping centre. Treat me with respect. Now,
Roval and Ringwood boys.
Yeah, because you played your juniors all at Roval, or were you at St Simon's?
Nah, so I actually originally played at Waverley Park Hawks, which is obviously.
Hang on, that's Hawthorn. I'm on to you.
Yeah, with the name obviously close to Waverley Park. But I only played there until about under 13s. Then I played for Roval Hawks the rest of my time there.
Is that how big a difference between those two? That sounds like the same club.
It was a fair difference, but I think with the way that Roval was set up, there was 2 teams, Roval Hawks and St Simon's Juniors. And basically every year it was either Roval versus St Simon's or Roval versus Vermont in the grand finals every year.
Okay.
So or Norwood.
Or Norwood. So...
we weren't as good as Vermont and Roval, but in my years we were. But
so I just wonder actually how good we would have been as a club if it was merged just to Roval, because St Simon's had Johnny Patton, they had a couple of my school mates who were sort of interleague players back then. Steve Scott, who played with us at Rangers, so there was a fair few good players on both teams.
The other thing was that, like, in talk about fairness, Roval was not fair because Roval had zoned all of like Dandenong, Pakenham, like everywhere that there was growth and young kids was playing for Roval. So we had teams in the competition who had 7 or 8 junior sides, and Roval had 21.
Oh wow!
Like that's how many kids were going through there. So you can, just by degree of size, the amount of the young players that were coming through that area, which is always funny too because Roval was like the dividing line between Dandenong and Eastern in the TAC Cup, so you could kind of go either way. So Lockie Whitfield was like one side of Stud Road, which meant that he went to Dandenong and played all his footy there. But then his like best mate was like the other side of Stud Road, so he came to us.
And to think that makes it Vic Metro and Vic Country as well. That's another thing.
Really? That's where Vic Country line starts.
Yeah, well, because obviously initially...
You do live in the bush.
Initially...
I don't live in the bush, but yeah.
Dandenong Stingrays were Vic Metro, and then they moved them to Vic Country to try even it up a little bit. So,
which is a massive pain in the arse because you can imagine where they host the Vic Country training sessions in like
Wodonga
Mall. That's where it was like in Gippsland was all the country hubs were down there, or Bendigo, or Ballarat.
Oh my
and you go like Dandenong's just looking at like us training about 25 minutes down the road from them whilst they chill. But see, like imagine if the zones were different, because then Eastern Rangers would have had their number 1 pick 3 years in a row, or the number 2 pick after that, because Lockie Whitfield was the number 1. So if he'd been on the other side of Stud Road, he would have played for us.
Let me ask you this: is it with the TAC Cup Eastern Rangers, are there still nuffies who like live for Eastern Rangers and they go to every game and they've got scarves and flags? And no. So even the fans are transitory.
Oh yeah.
They just like, I mean, a lot of the fans are probably just all the volunteers and stuff that are down there, whether they're
you have the
kitchen
clubmen,
Of course.
They still have the same clubman sort of people, like the people who are around the footy club all the time, cooking the soup, as H said. But not so much fans. We had this bloke. What was his name? There was the running coach's name. Do you remember him? Bigelow.
I remember a lot of people without their names, like because I actually don't really think about this. It's so long ago for me.
This bloke looked like he'd been in chemo permanently. Like he had not a single hair on his body. Not like just no eyebrows, nothing. And he was the running coach. And his only piece of advice to anyone was use your arms. Use your arms.
I remember that. Yep.
That was his whole like spiel. And mate, he was nuts, like completely nuts. But he would have been there for 30 years. We had another guy whose name escapes me. I think he might have passed actually, but he had one leg and he was, he had a
Was he the kicking coach?
Yeah, he was. But, speaking of Hawthorn, actually, Sean Murphy, who used to be our strength and conditioning coach there, is now the strength and conditioning coach. He was at Hawthorn. I think he's now gone to Essendon. So there's a few people out of Eastern that made it over the years. Okay. But we probably should acknowledge the elephant in the room and deal with the fact that we did lose yesterday.
Yeah, all right. Let's go from Eastern to Western.
Well, so this year, how many years have you been at the club now, H?
So this is my 6th year, and I was 6 at Freo.
Yep. What would you say is the biggest difference between Fremantle and the Dogs?
Well, I think just footy in general has changed so much. Like back Freo days, it was probably no secret Ross was quite a defensive coach. So
he made a defender out of you.
Yeah. So back then, like we were winning games, 60 to 40.
Yeah.
Myself as a role, like I'd come into the game, Ross was like, mate, just don't even worry about goals. Just 6 tackles. I want 6 tackles from you. I want pressure. They're probably not going to kick it. Probably not going to kick it to me anyway. So I was like, yep, sweet.
6 tackles. We'll still drop you up.
But I think that sort of nowadays, I think there's a lot more freedom in the game. Guys are definitely more backed into play sort of on their natural instinct versus sort of back then it was quite regimented. Everything was quite strict in how the game plan was set. And that might have just been the way Ross was coaching back then.
I think it was a sign of the times.
Yeah,
right?
But I think just nowadays, I think they try to make players to play with as much freedom as they can, and it's definitely there's no grilling, or there's not as much grilling as what there used to be back in the day.
There's never going to be no grilling.
Yeah, so I think coaches are a lot more measured nowadays than what they used to be in terms of feedback. It's more sort of productive feedback and how you can get better versus purely baking someone. So I think that's obviously a massive difference. And I think it just evolves as you get older. Like, I was so young and naive going when I was at Freo, especially early days. I was drafted as a 17-year-old. Obviously, never lived out of home.
Called to Perth.
Yeah, literally, footy's been my only job. Like, I'd never had a job before that. I remember I wanted to do work experience. Speaking about the Hawks, I wanted to do work experience at the Hawks just like as a ball boy for a week.
Hang on, Hawthorn or Roeville? or Waverley Park?
No, Hawthorn.
Oh, okay.
Because it was down the road.
Well, I did it at the Carlton. That's where my work
Yeah.
experience was.
Yeah,
I was
but-
pretending to be a physio for a week.
So those,
All I did was talk to Jared Waite because he never got on the park, so he was always in the physio room.
So, initially I wanted to do that. There's a few boys that did that, but myself and all my mates handed the form in too late, so we didn't get it. So we ended up doing work experience at Coles at Stud Park, the local shopping centre.
Nice.
And we got 62 cents an hour, so it was $25 a week. Spent about 100 on food. I was like, I was so
dodgy.
You're in debt.
yeah, honestly. So I was quite naive. So I think just in terms of just growing up, a bit more experienced around, obviously life experiences, but around footy and learning to just relax a little bit more around the club and again, just play to your strengths versus back in the day. You want to impress so much. You wanted to try go above and beyond, and sometimes it didn't work in your favour. So I think footy in itself has evolved, not just myself.
Hang on, what's an example of you trying to go above and beyond and it not working?
Well, I think just as a young guy, I mean, I was drafted, so I'm trying to think what I weighed.
What pick were you?
I was 20, pick 20. Yep. So I'll go off what. So pre-game,
66 is how much you
so
weighed.
pre-game on the weekend weighed in 86, right? And I was drafted at 67, so you can work that out. That's
Okay. So doing weights and stuff.
Yeah.
67, soaking wet.
Yeah, soaking wet 67. That was the reason why I was taking hangers, because I jump on blokes'
Gravity
backs
didn't
and
apply.
They wouldn't feel me, so they'd jump to try and take a mark and they'd shoot me up. But, so I think early on just trying to put on weight a little bit too quickly, end up pretty much getting osteitis pubis. So like it's just stuff like that I was trying to go above and beyond to try and get my body ready for playing AFL footy, where I think I just need to be a little bit more patient.
Yeah, we all go through that. Like
Those 15 Palmers you had before a game,
and
not a great idea.
the team was obviously A, experienced and B, good. So my first year, we made finals, and then we beat Geelong in Melbourne in elimination, and then we lost.
That's right, yeah.
And then the next year after that was grand final, and then we were sort of first or second for like 3 years in a row, and then sort of dropped off and went through the rebuild. But I think when you're coming in as a young player, you just want to play.
So did you play in the grand final?
No,
in 2013? That's why they lost.
I'd like to say that, but as in, because obviously going over to Perth, all my friends are based in Melbourne. It's probably pretty hard back then to watch waffle games on TV or
couldn't stream it back
streamed
then.
or whatnot. So I think even just trying to just play AFL footy so my friends and family could actually see, that was probably one of the things that I was trying to do.
Yeah, I think when you're young too, like to answer your question in the way that I would be, it's not so much that you do specific things that make you look bad because you're trying too hard. Like it certainly happens. Like there's, I would say there's very good examples at the moment of people maybe, trying a bit too hard, like running after the game.
Okay.
That was recently posted all over Twitter with a guy with a mullet.
Yes.
So stuff like that is like that is one specific example, but it's more, I think, it's the constant trying to do absolutely everything perfect, and then when things don't go perfect, it disrupts you a lot because you're trying. It's like the reason why I think pre-game routines are really stupid, like as in wear the same jocks or whatever, is because the moment that doesn't happen, you've got this whole attachment to that being why you played good. And it's the same when you're young, because you're going, I need to make sure that I weigh the exact right thing and I've done the exact right thing to prepare.
Unrelenting standards.
Yeah, and it's just the paralysis by analysis stuff that I think is for young people. So when do you think that shifted? When did you find a bit more sort of balance with your approach to footy? Was it after a few years, after when you came back to Melbourne?
I think it was probably after my fourth year. So first year, I played 3 games and then had glandular fever, missed the rest of the year. Second year, I had a lot of groin stuff. So I played, I think I went 3, 9, 12, 11. And then basically from my 5th year onwards was like, 18, 20, 20. So then that's where I started to feel a bit more comfortable. So I think once I felt like I was more ingrained in the side.
You knew what to expect.
Yeah, knew what to expect and probably didn't put as much pressure on myself. I think when you're young, you're young, you want to play as best you can. You want to impress. You want to, be seen on TV in front of all your family and friends and do well.
As soon as the coach says something to you want to cry.
Yeah, pretty much. But I think until you feel like not necessarily you're treading on eggshells, but you feel like you can get away with maybe not playing a game as well as you would have liked, and you know you're not going to get dropped.
Yeah.
I think that was probably the time where I felt a little bit more comfortable and sort of went for it.
Makes sense.
It's so like this is again so what we try and do on this show is you can imagine we've got the Nuffy fan sitting to my right.
Hi everyone.
Who when I ask him every week for a tip, and this bloke just goes, "We're going to win by 10 goals." It's so stupid. Like he doesn't even think. His heart works very much stronger than his head.
Yes.
And then obviously, my background is playing at the top level. And, I think the thing that fans need to understand is for all of the guys we've got running around at the moment, I would say, and I this is my opinion, is that we've got 4 or 5 guys every week at the moment who just aren't quite there yet. And what happens is you can imagine, and this happens at every single club, when you have young people in the team, the way I like to think about it is there's 1,000 things you have to do every game, right? And if you've got 1,000 things to do, if you're Bont, you do 999 very well.
Yes.
But if you're a first-year player, you might only do 500 of them right. And if you extrapolate that over the course of 2 players versus 5 players versus 10 players, that's where the inconsistency comes from, because you might have 10 blokes playing well and 10 blokes not. So when we've got 5 guys who are out there at the moment who are young and trying to find their feet, and to your point, H, they're trying to find their position in the side where they're not worried about being dropped next week. That's where our inconsistency, I believe, is coming from.
Okay.
And the best teams don't have those bottom 5 players. They have, at least 20 players every single week who are, right up to the standard. So my encouragement is it took H, you said it took you 5 years to really solidify yourself in a team. That's how long it takes for a lot of players. Like it takes that long to work it out and get physically up to standard, consistency, mentally, emotionally, all of that stuff.
Is it measured through time or through games played?
It depends. I mean, some players, you can answer that question, I think, H, but some players obviously come in, far more equipped to make the transition from junior to senior footy. What do you think it is? Is it time or is it just an individual thing?
Yeah, I think for me it was probably both. As I spoke about before, my body weight, I was sort of nowhere near sort of the standard of what you needed it to be. But I guess
a jumper and a pair of shorts running around on it.
Yeah, pretty much. But I think with my role as a small forward back then, it probably didn't make it a whole lot of difference really, because I wasn't finding myself in one-on-one contests and whatnot. And I sort of always prided myself on sort of my ability to tackle, even like whatever size I would be. So because I think probably tackling is more mental than physical anyway. And just sort of
it helps to not be 20 kilos.
It absolutely does. But I think,
Did you ever have an issue tackling someone?
No, see, my technique was always very simple, because if you get your arms around someone and you drop your knees when you weigh 105 kilos, no one's getting away from that.
Yeah, see, if I do that and try to drop my knees, I'll probably keep running with me on the back.
It'd look hilarious.
Especially
it'd be like
days.
a backpack.
Yeah, definitely.
Not anymore. You're 84, 85 now.
Yeah, not anymore. Definitely not anymore. But I think it is a little bit of both. But I feel like, we've had guy Bailey Smith, for example, he's come in straight away. He's played every game, and he's someone that has been up to the standard straight away. And he was probably someone early on that was definitely doing too much. And I think it just burnt him out a little bit. But he's played a great footy for us for a long time now, and he's still so young. So it's probably
Bont's another good example.
Yeah, so it's probably different for different people. So I definitely feel like it is a bit of a mixture, but I'd probably lean towards actual just purely games played. I feel like just the experience of being out there. Because guys can play good footy at VFL level and really push for selection and get in there, but nothing's quite like playing AFL every week. You get used to it a lot quicker when you're younger, for sure.
And here's the other ultimate fact. You know what expedites this whole process? The coach telling you, mate, you're going to keep playing. We're going to keep playing you every week.
Yes.
And we want you to just get better. Don't worry about a bad game. Just
How often does that happen, though?
It happened to me in the last 6 games of the Giants.
Okay.
As in, they're like, they didn't tell me before I played the 6 games. They told me about halfway through. They're like, geez, Tom, we probably could have dropped you. But we're going to keep you out there, right? I'm like, who else are you going to roll out? Everyone else is either injured or, wants to go back to Victoria. So, but yeah, like the confidence the coach gives you. Did you find, because I think, the way that you've gone from Ross to Bevo, at least like on paper, it sounds like to me, it's like, you get the structure and the rigidity that Ross provides, and I think he's very well renowned for being the hard ass that he is.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then Bevo, one of his great capabilities, I think, is to unlock people's potential. Like I think my example that I always use is Liam Picken. Right, Liam Picken basically was a tagger for 7 or 8 years, and then Bevo came and was like, oh, "You're actually pretty good at footy.
Yeah,
maybe we should let you get a kick." So did you find that transition? Do you think gave you a great platform, obviously with Ross and then coming to play at the Bulldogs? Not only I imagine you obviously, started playing more back at the end of your time at Freo, but then came to the Bulldogs. But from what I saw, you went from, someone who was like, just a defender to someone who was an incredible intercept marker, obviously great courage in the air. Did you find that those two personalities probably were a nice sort of journey for you to go on as a player?
Yeah, I think so. And I think Ross instilled a lot of things in me from my time at Freo, not only, on the footy field, but off field as well, and the way you sort of go about day-to-day life. And again, as I mentioned before, coming in so naive, 17-year-old, mum and dad did everything for me. You have to grow up pretty quick, and especially going to the other side of the country. So,
did you live in Freo or in Perth?
Yeah, so I was sort of in and around Freo for the whole 6 years, sort of within a 5K radius of Freo. Awesome spot.
Yeah,
for
that's pretty good.
Listeners out there have never been to Perth. The CBD,
the only good place.
Well, the CBD, there's probably not as much going on in the CBD. And
There's plenty going on in the CBD.
Oh yeah, a lot of meth.
there's a bit of that going on. But I think it's funny because every time we play over in Perth, we would stay in the city, and there was a lot of people who'd be like, how did you spend 6 years here? And I'm like, well, because no one spends any time in the city. Everyone's by the beach.
Yeah, Cottesloe. Yeah. It's some really nice parts of Perth.
So what we're saying, Tim English, is it's a terrible place. Don't move back there.
Yeah, he hates it. Hates the golf
The
course.
ongoing joke I have with people is that West Coast are going to offer 33% of equity in their club to get Tim to come back and play for them because they need him so bad.
They'd have to offer a fair bit of coin, I would have thought. But,
yeah.
I think I wouldn't change anything from my first 6 years being at Freo. As I said, learned a lot of life lessons, and I think coming across to the Dogs, not only the coach is sort of instilling confidence in me, but then the guys I had around me. Easton Wood was someone who straight away looked up to him to the way he played, extremely courageous, backed himself in the air, and I sort of just wanted to be a bit like Woody, really. So
we're going to have to cut that. I can't have
Easton. I know.
His head's big enough as it is.
He'd love to hear that.
Does Woody listen? I think he just listens to his own episode.
Yeah,
if I tell him, he'll listen in. I reckon.
Yeah.
But we had obviously Woody had Dale Morris is another one that went about his business week in, week out, no fuss.
Easton is basically Bevo, and Dale is Frostlight.
Pretty much. So I felt like coming to the Dogs, we had a really good mix in the back line of guys that were really really hard and played their role to a T. And then we had guys like JJ, who was really showed a lot of flair with the ball, really creative. Obviously Caleb as well. So I was able to sort of watch all their games and how they went about it, sort of on a day-to-day basis as well, and just try to pick the brains of those guys and try to all sort of mix.
They're a pretty tight-knit group too, right? You guys. The back line, at least when it was going really well, was always a really close group, and it almost felt like a sort of separate team in the team, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we always sort of refer to ourselves as the men's department. That's always what we like to say.
They're only behind closed doors because I never heard
only
that.
behind closed doors. But it is almost a team within a team. Obviously, clearly not. But then, sort of when you're out there, the back six, it can get tough at times, especially when you're playing away. And if things aren't going well, you have the opposition cheer squad behind you, getting stuck into you.
Yeah.
And,
who's your least favourite cheer squad to play in front of?
There's a few. There's
of course.
There's a few. There's no teams cheer squads that really go easy on any defenders.
Except Giants, because there is none.
Sorry. And the Bulldogs are all lovely.
I shouldn't be so mean.
That's probably why I stopped kicking in, because I didn't want to go fetch the ball at the fence because they were just straight over.
Yeah, we got Timmy kicking in for us.
Oh my God! Let's not talk about. Actually, can I ask you this, Croz? Because you played in the twos on Saturday.
Yep.
Great win against Box Hill. What did we get? We've won 9 in a row.
9 in a row now. Yep. Funnily enough, I do my hammy and we win 8 in the trot, so maybe I was the issue down there. But
at least you didn't break if you come back and that loss. Yeah,
no, that was probably the best win that the VFL boys have had this year. Didn't start off too well. We had a lot of injuries at AFL level, and as you know, there's a lot of injuries at the top level. The VFL depth starts to struggle a little bit. So really pleased with the way the boys went. Really tough conditions, wet conditions. Box Hill probably had 20 AFL listed players. We might have had 10 or 11, and then non-AFL listed players. Cal Porter, who played with us.
Yep.
Cal Brown, who was at Collingwood. So pretty much a fully stacked AFL experienced team, really.
So which players should we be getting into the AFL side, apart from yourself, of course?
I'd like to get in there soon. We'll see what happens. But there's definitely.
I reckon there might be a change or two this week.
Who knows?
You don't have to say that. I'll say that. I guarantee.
I'll leave that up to you two to talk about. But there's. I think the pleasing thing about, where I'm at in my career, obviously I want to be playing AFL footy. That's no secret. But playing VFL at the moment, you can sort of take pride in the way that you see the young guys develop week in, week out. And I think probably took our young guys a little bit just to find their feet, which it does for any first-year player, unless you're, Bailey Smith or someone like that that can come in straight away. But seeing their development, especially probably over the last 8 weeks, where I've been able to probably have more of a keen eye on them from not necessarily a supporter perspective, but just sort of being at the games and being able to watch and not sort of being directly involved in the game. So, they all played really well on the weekend, and you just want pressure for spots, and that sort of makes the AFL team better. It makes the VFL team better as well. So we'll see what happens this week. I'll leave.
What's the VFL like at the moment? Because it's kind of been a rough 4 years for them, right? And it's obviously changed drastically. Would you say the standard is sort of back to where it was pre-COVID?
I think it's just the way it's set up now. I think early days. I mean, I was obviously in Perth at the time, but. Back when they used to have the VFL and then the VFL reserves, where the VFL reserves are all the young guys who are just starting, and then sort of the more mature.
You are old, because that was before my time.
I am old. Well, Taylor Dre always talks about it. Taylor Dre, he's probably the only person. He's won a VFL Resi's flag, a VFL flag, and an AFL flag, and a TSC Cup flag.
Wow, the holy quadrangle.
Send it to Swamp.
Yeah.
Swampy
would love that.
Well, actually, yeah. I just didn't want to do the podcast without forgetting the number one stat about Hayden Crozier, the first ever person to kick a goal at the Shane Warne end of the MCG.
Right. We did talk about that on the podcast, didn't we?
We did, yeah. We gave you an award back when we were sponsored by Jazz Stevens.
Yeah.
I loved Warney growing up, so that's a nice little stat. Yeah, back to the VFL. I think it's just a lot younger than sort of what it used to be. And there's a lot of guys that are getting drafted out of it, which is good. But I think the COVID year probably changed things up a little bit. There would have been guys based in Melbourne that probably went to the Waffle or Sandful.
A lot of them end up playing up north in Queensland.
Yeah, played up in Queensland, and they might have stayed there. So I think the depth probably drops off a little bit more, probably for the non-AFL line clubs. But then you see teams, Werribee and Williamstown are top 4 at the moment, which is great. Yeah. But then sort of the bottom end of it, where it's obviously Bullants and Coburg, which is
my local team, the Preston Bullants, not going great.
Yeah, which is
who are the Dolphins?
Frankston
Dolphins,
right.
yeah.
Yep.
They've been in and out of the comp like 8 times in 10 years.
Yeah.
I like them.
Yeah, but
they got broke 5 times.
The game the other week against the Bullants, it was I felt for them, because it's a tough thing to see, and I think
how much did you guys win by?
That it was 160 to 4. Or
yeah, they scored it behind every quarter.
Yeah,
and some of them were gettable.
Yeah,
we had Toby McLean on the Patreon one. He talked us through it.
Oh. Yeah, he ran into about 10 meters out and got sort of pushed as he kicked and missed, but. No, I mean it's always tough with that, because young guys that want to play AFL, like it's hard for them to. I mean, we go out there, you win, and everything's good. We've won by this amount, but it depends. Can you really take that much out of the game in terms of there might be not that there was, but you might be little habits when you come up against a team like that you don't want to do, because that'll
won't translate.
Yeah, it won't translate, and all. And obviously it wouldn't work at AFL level. So
yeah, and also the coaches do sit there and they go, they do. Like, just disregard games like that. Yeah. Like, so if you're trying to build a form, right? And they don't disregard the game, because if you play rubbish against the rubbish teams, which and it sounds stupid, but I always struggled playing in games like that, because one, I don't care to win by 20 goals. Like, it just doesn't interest me. Like, if we win by 4 goals, it's much more enjoyable to me, and it's an actual contest. And particularly, I suppose it's less so about the score and more about the fact that this team shouldn't be playing against us, basically. So, like, if you play bad, then the coaches go, you played bad against the worst team. You can wait another 6 weeks before you get a game in the once.
Yeah. And I think it's just the attitude as well that the guys bring into the game. Going to the game, I mean, it's no secret to say, like, you're gonna win.
Yeah.
But you got to have that attitude for the 4 quarters, especially from a defensive side of things. Like, the intent around the ball has to be good, because if it's off, it stands out like dog's balls. So, I mean, it's hard, because if I was controlling the VFL, I mean, the team's got so much rich history. That's probably the issue with it. So you got Northern Bullants, Preston Bullants, you got Coburg. Like, if they were actually merging, the team wouldn't be that bad, I wouldn't have thought, because there's good young players from both teams.
6 or 8 players from each team who are good enough. Yeah.
And especially as it gets later in the year, you've got guys that are playing for those teams that are losing by that amount and going, I'll go play local footy. I want to qualify for finals.
Yeah.
So then they leave. So then it brings in more young guys that probably aren't ready for VFL. And then it probably drops the standard again.
It's a vicious cycle.
It'd be. I mean, I feel for them. It'd be
and that's what they'd be doing too, I imagine, to fill their teams. Right? They'd be selling the dream of, like, you can play against AFL listed players and see if you're up to the standard. But like I don't think people understand how big the gap is between local level footy, VFL footy, and AFL footy. And it's not just the gap of skill level; it's half the stuff that you do at those bottom levels don't work in the AFL because you can't just be a slow in and under Dow player, which historically is what the VFL was, because you're coming up against guys like Bont and Libber and these guys who can run. So if you want to be slow, like the only player that I can think of from the last 10 years that has managed to somehow get away with being the slowest human on earth is Ben Cunnington, and he's played he's incredibly strong and incredibly skilled, so that's how he compensates. But I do feel for those clubs who are clearly just trying to keep it going. Like Frankston's a great example. They've come in and out of the VFL. I joked before, obviously, that they've gone broke a few times, but they're a club that has huge history and a great ground and a great supporter base. And, to the question about the TSC couple, there are genuine Frankston nuffies. Like, there's a guy with the drum who has said some horrible things.
Yeah, I copped a mouthful against Frankston. There's a few Rover boys that play at Frankston, which is good. And the environment down there actually looks really, really fun.
Yeah.
Like they're really loving it. They started off pretty decent. They've dropped away
Benny
a little
Cav
bit.
came from there too, didn't he? End up playing down there.
Yeah, I saw Jack Nunes actually is coming back and playing for him now. But one of their boys, ball spilled. I was obviously playing back. Ball spilled out to the boundary line. One of their players has picked up. This is right in front of their supporter
the
base.
lads.
Yeah, so the guys,
the men's department.
Men's department. guys with the drums, everything. They were going nuts. Yeah. And especially because they were in the game a little bit against us, and guys picked it up. And as he went to kick, I've bumped him over the line, and it wasn't like. I
checked him.
I thought I hit him pretty hard, not 67 kilos anymore, so I might have put a little bit more force into him. But
walking off flexing.
Yeah, definitely wasn't a late hit or anything like that. And their supporters just. And I was running off laughing. Like, I don't know if you guys probably would have seen the clip of Ash Johnson when he took that mark on the boundary. The guy slid over the line, and Ash Johnson ran and holding the ball out to the supporters. Did you see that?
No, I haven't seen that.
You seen that, Boydy?
Nah, I don't think so.
So he's taking a mark on the boundary, and then Frank's defenders slid past him, so he had heaps of space. And he's running towards his goals, looking at the cheer squad, holding the ball up, tries to bounce it. It doesn't come up to him. And then he tries to pick the ball up again and gets run down holding the ball. So the big
should never do that.
So he popped up. There's this thing going around social media where it's the best 22 players that haven't taken a career bounce yet. And he was one of them, right? So he said, so for AFL, he hasn't taken a bounce. He's taken a bounce in VFL, hasn't come back up to him after showing it to the crowd, and then got run down and got like shorts had come down. They're all getting stuck into him. So yeah.
And do we count it as a bounce? No.
And he commented on one of the posts saying, "You got me, boys." I was thinking about it too much, but no, it's good. Like there's still a lot of passionate fans around the VFL.
All right. Well, let's go back to the AFL before we wrap up. I'll tell you a good stat. The last time we lost to Hawthorn in Tassie late in the season, we made a grand final.
There we go.
So I mean, I've got up to the eyes with confidence.
Well, we're playing West Coast this week. That's the AFL equivalent of the Preston Bullants.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Surely we it's at Docklands. Surely we win this one.
They've been playing better, but
they have been playing better. I think the amazing thing about AFL footy at the moment, I think Gill, and obviously Gill's going now, but all the hierarchy of the AFL would just be loving the fact that it is such an even competition.
And Collingwood are on top.
Yeah,
they'd be loving
that too. Cash. But I think you mentioned West Coast. Obviously, they've had their sort of up and down.
I'll say you don't have to say it. They should be playing in the waffle for most of the year. I said that, not Hayden. Tom said that.
So the thing with any team in the AFL is if you're 5% off, you get found out. And I think probably on paper, people would have said on the weekend, Doggy's going to beat Hawthorn. But
yes, I did.
If you're slightly off, any team will put you to the sword. So I always speak about if I do any pre-game stuff like I've done with you a few times. I think the key with us, if we start well, we'll go on with it. So we actually started well on the weekend. And
how do you approach? So like, it is a really strange last couple of games, right? Like, as in you've got, as you said, you've got West Coast at home.
Yeah.
Who are bottom of the ladder and for much of the year have basically looked like they aren't an AFL
correct
level side. And then you've got Geelong in Geelong, which we haven't beat them down there in 15 years.
Yeah, millenniums.
How do you think, and you obviously haven't been back to the club since yesterday, how do you think that, how do you think about this as someone trying to prepare, obviously, and ideally you're playing ones this week, how do you prepare for those two last games? Understanding that obviously finals are on the line, but there's such different sort of propositions.
Yeah, well, I think what sort of we're focused on the last, well, probably the whole time since I've been at the club is focus more on what we're doing and probably less what the opposition are doing.
Yeah.
And if you look after what you do well and if you do it well, most of the time it works out pretty well. So I think from the way, I mean, as I said, I haven't been into the club yet, but I think just from watching on TV on the weekend, sort of our intent around the footy, our missed tackles, just the basics of the game, it really let ourselves down, especially second and third quarter. So I think if we fix that up, we'll be okay. It's amazing AFL footy, if you don't get the small things right, how much it can hurt you. And especially the way we defend, we're quite an aggressive in the way we set up. That's obviously no secret. And if there's a lot of mistakes up the ground, it can hurt us a lot. So we just got to make sure we get our basics right, and I think the rest will look after itself.
I remember when I was playing at the Giants, we spent every week game planning for the opposition. It was like, what are we going to negate this week? And we used to literally change our game plan. It was like, we're kicking short this week, or we're kicking long this week. And it just doesn't work, because at some point you have to define what your style is so that you can try and, put your best style out there. And if it falls down, then you have to change things.
You go on the full David King. What's their brand?
Yeah, pretty
what
much.
do they stand for?
Pretty much. So, and there's a difference between, like we always used to talk about when I was playing, there's a difference between like plans and style. So our style never changes, but our plans will. So, for instance, we'll play a really aggressive half-back up at the stoppage this week because we think we can get an advantage. That's a plan. But the style is, to H's point, is like we're an aggressive defensive team that plays from in front. So if we're getting back to our best this year, H, what in your opinion, what are we looking for as supporters? Above and beyond obviously starting well, what's the real style stuff that you guys have been talking about, I imagine, every single week trying to get right? What are we looking for as supporters this week to see that we're back to our best?
Yeah, well, I think around the footy, ruthless around the ball, so being really clean, one touch with our hands, being able to get the ball from in tight into open spaces, backs being able to influence the play in the air and on the ground, whether that's rolling off your man to support when there's a one-on-one contest, playing with a bit of flair, being able to take the game on, use the speed of the ball, the forwards just being able to create a contest, whether that's marking or bringing the ball to ground. Smalls putting on relentless pressure, forcing quick kicks back out. So they're probably.
He passed the test, didn't he?
I've named
He's been listening in the meetings. Either that or he hasn't listened in 5 years, because that's the same shit we used to talk about back then.
It's definitely similar to what was happening when I first came in. But I think they're probably the main things. If you just picture us at our best, you think about how strong we are around the ball, how clean we are with our hands. Libba, Bont, Ads, you've seen them at their best, being able to get the ball out, and then our transition, bringing the ball from back to forward. And as I said, our forwards just really just competing in the air. And I think a strength of ours over the years, and even back to when I first got to the club, is we haven't had guys that have kicked huge bags all the time. We won't have guys kicking 70 goals for the year. It's just such an even spread.
Yeah.
So we don't need, Jamara and Naughty to kick 5 each to kick a winning score. We have mids that kick goals. We have smalls that kick goals. So as long as we can get even contribution around the field, we should be all right.
We'll win the flag. All right, sweet. That's
nice.
good. That's locked in. Hayden, thanks so much for coming on. Boy, do you have anything? Oh, do you have anything to plug? Do you have any side hustles or anything you want to mention?
I don't have any side hustles, but I know a good friend of mine, Tommy Sheridan, would probably like his sonnies to be plugged, as we always do. So
Sure, mate. Odell Beckham wore him,
Rick's eyewear.
Mate, I don't know. You're gonna. We'll ask you off air how much he spends on Facebook advertising. It's on my feed so much.
It'd be a lot. He pops up all the time, but.
So what's that called? What are the sunnies called?
Rick's Eyewear.
Rick's Eyewear.
They probably don't need any more promotion.
RIXX.
Yeah, they don't need any more promotion. I mean, he's a social media guru, that bloke.
He hasn't been on my algorithm, but
he does do a podcast, so we could always,
Oh, really? What about sunglasses?
No, about what is it about? Footy, sport,
just everything really. It's probably more about sport than anything.
About him. Yeah, it's like that's kind of what it is. Right?
That his journey.
Yeah. Oh, very good, very good. Mate, it was great to catch up. Well, I'm feeling optimistic about this week, but I think that the way that the boys go in the next 7 days will very much dictate my confidence into the next 14 days.
Yes.
So yeah, good luck with the review. I know you didn't play, so you can walk in confident. But equally, it's never nice to be a part of a losing club week. So
absolutely.
It'll be messed up. Hey, don't forget, you can book Boydy and myself for your grand final week function, or your semi-final week functions if you want. You're going to put up a thing on your LinkedIn. You made me join LinkedIn.
Yeah, I did.
So I don't know how that works.
Speaking of social media guru, LinkedIn.
Mate,
I'm big.
I joined LinkedIn recently, and I was like, getting a little bit older, so
No, you need to get on there. Yeah. And as in, like, let's be honest, you're closer to the end than the beginning of your career.
I'm definitely not playing 20 years. I'll give you the hot
You're
tip.
playing 24, that's for sure. So yeah, I was with the Vixens at work on the weekend. There's a couple of girls who play for the Vixens down there, and they're like, I'm like, are you guys on LinkedIn? Because they try to find you, and they're like, nah. I'm like, why not? like you do all this corporate work because the Vixens, basically the way that it works is that they have these sponsorships, and then the players just get like farmed out to do all this extra work, right? Because they don't get paid anywhere near as well as footballers do. And it's the perfect chance to get out there, Danny, and promote yourself and get some corporate gigs. That's where the cash is, I always get told.
That's true. Yeah. All right. Well, book Boydy, myself, book Hayden as well. We'll do a triple act.
Yeah, book me if there's any real estate companies out there. I know Jay Stevens, Nick Johnson Real Estate, coming to close to the end of my career and probably going to get into real estate after.
You want to get into real estate? You're better than that.
Oh, well, I can talk shit, so that's
And wear a nice suit. You got a nice suit.
But Hayden, you've got a soul.
I do have a soul, but
Someone's got to sell houses,
Great families involved in the real estate game. Those two, obviously out in the West, and then Nick Johnson out in Brighton. So if anyone has a job for me down the track, I'll happily take one.
All right, there's the final message for us all. Employ us.
Yeah,
absolutely. Hopefully I'll hold on for another year or two. We'll see what happens, but
Go Dogs.
Go Dogs.
I gave my childhood to that roar of the red, white and blue sea, and the knowledge that you had two loves, the Bulldog boys and me. 20 years on, I feel that longing hanging in September air. But the reason I go every week is to pretend you're still there. And they will find the glory one day, and I will throw it at your feet. It's a long, long road they're running for you, the dogs of Footscray streets. Long, long road they're running for you, the dogs of Footscray streets.